R.W. Kaz Kastner was a very successful sports car racing driver in the 1950s. He also became a very capable race car tuner, which led to him becoming service manager at Cal Sales, Triumph's Western wholesale distributor. He bought a TR3 and proceeded to rack up race wins with his new Triumph. It was company policy that executives could not compete in racing, so when Standard Triumph purchased Cal Sales in 1960, Kaz had to abandon his racing exploits. He soon diversified and introduced a series of performance parts for Triumph cars, which he sold directly back to Triumph. He also wrote a series of competition preparation manuals available to anyone interested in competing with their Triumph, and it was these ventures which led to the setting up of the US competition department with Kaz as competition manager.
All right, is everybody ready? Here we have Kastner. Let's give that command.
Gentlemen and Susan, start your engines.
All right, here we go.
This is the stuff from when I was racing. That's on this wall. The other wall is the manager side. In the olden days, they got a dash plaque from each race event. And so everything from Pebble Beach through the Del Monte Forest to Glendale to, all the places up and down the coast, from over in Wyoming, at Cheyenne, Wyoming, US Grand Prix at Riverside, all that. I was racing myself. And I kept getting these letters, and I was building parts and engines and all that kind of stuff in my garage in Manhattan Beach. And so people were continually writing to me and wanting answers. Well, how do you do this and how do you do that? And 15, 20 letters a day, and from all over the world. I mean, and servicemen and all this kind of thing were writing because they were buying the cars. And so it got on down to it, and it really was. I suppose the crux was when I resigned. And that was after the Sebring in 1963, when I'd done the cars, the three cars. After my normal job, I had one fellow helping me who was a mechanic. Anyway, we got there with that, and that was went on and did the race. And then I was asked to come up to New York, and all this is in my books. But I went up to New York and met the president of the company because I hadn't gotten anything for all of this overtime work. I lost 20 pounds more than that while we were working on these things. It was 7 days a week to get them done under the time frame. And anyway, went in and said, well, he said, oh, good job. Everybody else was delighted, and they took me out to lunch and all that business. And I said, well, I'd like to think it reasonable for me to be compensated for some of the time we put in this and the efforts. And that was Martin Tustin, and he was the president. And he said, if that's how you feel, Cass, you should seeketh greener pastures. So we got back to L.A., and I'd made friends with Carroll Shelby years before then. And before he'd done any of got his notoriety with the Cobra cars. And so Carroll was at the track, and we'd talked when I was there. So when I came back to L.A., I said, right, I went over to see Carroll. I said, well, da-da-da-da-da, and I'm ready to move on to seek greener pastures. He said, well, seek them right here. And I went over and had a meeting with he and a representative from the Ford Motor Company, and they offered me about I think maybe a 75% increase in pay, and a car, and lots of little perks that I never even heard of before. And I said, fine, that's a deal with me. And meantime, the presidency had been changed, and Chris Andrews was the new president, and Martin Tustin was gone. And he was a car aficionado, and he appreciated the work that we'd been doing and heard about it, and inquired from other people, obviously. So we talked, as I say, for about 20 minutes. And I said, so he offered me the same deal. And he said, we can't be in a bidding contest with the Ford Motor Company, but we're willing to meet their deal. I said, it's a done deal. So my parents lived in Western New York, upstate, and I went up to see them, and then I sent a telegram to Carroll saying, well, I'm sorry, pal, but I've decided I'm going to stay here, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay there and go on with what I was doing. And anyway, so that's how it started. And so then I would think that within a month, I was on my way to Coventry. And in the space of like 2 years, in Class E production, if you didn't have a TR4, you weren't in it. I mean, there'd be a grid of 25 cars, and 20 of them would be TR4s. Because in this country, we had a different method of competition. So if you had a car that had, let's say, Weber carburetors and overhead cams, you're not going to be running against the same car that's got SU carburetors and a cam in the block. I mean, that's not fair. I mean, one has highly, a lot more potential. So the cars were classified by potential. So the secret was to make sure that you had enough potential to not get just kicked out of your class, and that's my part. And so I got a lot of things done through the SCCA that normally wouldn't be done. And I was doing the homologation with the SCCA, and they have these questions and what you're allowed to do, what had you been allowed to do, and I'd take each rule and I'd look at it and say, what can I possibly do with this to give myself an advantage? But I do the homologation, and I'd always throw in red herrings. I'd put in extra wide wheels. I'd put in roller camshafts once, and they went crazy, because of the competition board that was going through this list of things that we're going to do. Well, I didn't want roller camshafts. All I wanted was not pay attention to the fact that I wanted some close ratio gears, or I wanted a light flywheel, or some other thing, so that would pass over there, so they could leap on this red herring I had on. And it worked year after year after year. It was great. As I said before, that the first time I went to Coventry, I'd talking with the engineers, and they had meetings that I was in, and they asked what I was doing and how I was doing, because I've been pretty successful with the cars in racing in this country, and it was helping sell cars and all that kind of business. We were getting notoriety. And I told them what I was doing. Well, it was a little bit heavy, I think, for most people, because I said they were only making 135 horsepower with a Lawrence twin engine, and I thought, that wouldn't get you to the back of the grid. So I was kind of kidded about it a little bit. Well, it must be the California air where you get all this horsepower now. Well, Harry Webster was just a terrific man, and he said, what we'll do, Cass, with your tuning, what you need is a dynamometer. I said, what I need is a dynamometer. And so he went out on the floor, and they had some out in manufacturing that I'm used for test engines. They'd take an occasional one off and stick on, and it was DPX3, and he packed it all up and sent it to me, and so I put it all together and started with an actual dyno. I could really see what was going on. And so I went my engines at that time, just the first engine we put on it, it had like 150 horsepower, and so we made another 6 or 7 horsepower after that, and I sent over graphs. I had the graph paper from the competition department, or from engineering over there, so I did it on their paper and sent it over. Well, it's still California air. So finally, to settle all this thing, Webster said, okay, and this is in a meeting when we were in Coventry, and he said, okay, well, I'll send you an engine, Cass, and you build it up and send it back and test it, send us back with the paperwork. So he sent me a brand new stock TR4 engine, and I went ahead and did my fiddle faddle with it, and we made 154.5 or 6 horsepower with it, and sent the paperwork, put it back in the box, sent it back to Coventry. They put it on the box, and they made 1 horsepower more than I did. Exit California Air. That was the last we ever heard about the California Air situation, because there was the power. It was 20 more horsepower than they were making with Webers and whatever else. So then the next part of that was, well, we'd like you to do it here. And of course, we've got unions and all that, but I got along with everybody. It seemed to me, I knew there was a problem, but it didn't affect me at all. And so I said, okay. I said, the only thing we'll have to use my push rods and my camshaft. But other than that, so I went to Coventry, and I spent a week, and we built an engine there. And just exactly, and the guy in the shop that were doing the fiddling of the head and all of that stuff, and I was there overseeing it, but I didn't do it. I didn't have my hands on it. So they all did it, and I told them what I wanted done and how to do it and all that business. They put it all together, And as it was finished at about 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and there wasn't time to get it on a test bed, and I had to leave. I had to come back to LA. So Ray Henderson said, "Oh, well, I think we could slide that back and get that on the dyno this afternoon. Wait till everybody's out of here and we're done." And so that went on the chain fall and into the dyno, and we made the same power up. The one that we built there is the one I'd built in my shop. And that was the crowning end of it all. And that is when I really had credentials as far as the engineering department was concerned.